A quote by Tesla: "Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality." That's what happened with the globe theory. Everybody knew the world was flat until one day some guy came along and said, "Oh no, it's a ball. We're spinning through space. We're circling the sun." A lie is a lie, even if everybody believes it. And truth is truth, even if no one believes it.
Ptolemy refined a system with Earth at the center.
They basically stole our minds and enslaved us by showing us a picture of a ball. Said, "Here's what you live on, it's a ball." And then they show us a different picture of a ball. Here's a different picture of a ball. And everyone's just like, yeah, that's the same place. It doesn't matter if the colors of the continents change. It doesn't matter if the color of the oceans change. It doesn't matter if the continents change sizes, change locations.
Copernicus was the main guy who started off the revolution. His book on the revolutions of the celestial spheres changed, thousands of years of thinking about the Earth being completely still, as you can experience it for yourself every single day of your life, and obviously the bodies move in the heavens above us. That's what your senses experience. Copernicus changed all that round, but he didn't use any science. There's no science in his book. He got his ideas from the Hermetica, from Hermes Trismegistus. And it basically says how the sun sits enthroned in the middle of the solar system, and we all orbit around it. What's that sound like to you? That sounds like sun worship. It sounds like sun cult to me. Because later on, I'm going to show you, Fred Hoyle was another astronomer royal. He said there's no difference in the mathematics, whether it's geocentric or heliocentric. Whether the sun moves around the Earth moves around the sun. The math works the same, exactly the way. The connections between just from the imaging. Yeah, I wouldn't have a portrait done with a big 33 on it, or a triangle with an eye, or anything like that. I wouldn't want to be connected or associated with any of that stuff, because I'm not really into that kind of stuff. I'm working for the other side. But Copernicus obviously had no problem with the square and compass. Yeah, with the big wheel here, we've got the big sun wheel, and we've got the Mercury sign as well. Yeah, all leads back again. You can investigate that more for yourself. The Book of Thoth by Aleister Crowley. Freemasonry with the sun over the head. Yeah, as above, so below. Yeah, one of the reasons why Mercury, because it can rise in the morning and the night, so it's also hermaphroditic. Both sexes, which obviously is Baphomet as well, which we know as the breast and the penis. It goes on and on and on. It's all about cult sun worship. You can trace it back to Babylon. You can see all the different gods going through it, but there is no science to Copernicus's on the revolutions of the spheres. It's a philosophical tract, and it's all based on the Hermetica.
Up is up, down is down. If a visual aid, I have a pin. If I release it from my grip, what happens? Anybody? Correct. It falls. Was that gravity? No. The molecules that make up this pen, the plastic, the ink, it's got a little rubber grip on it, are more dense than the molecules of the air surrounding it. The molecules of the air will not support the weight, so they fall. So it falls when you let go. Like that. Density and mass make an object heavy. There's no gravity. Simple. Up is up, down is down. Objects fall because they're heavy. If it floats, it's lighter than air. Helium, fill a balloon with helium, it goes up. If you filled it with hydrogen, it would also go up. Lighter than air, floats. Heavier than air, falls. It's not complicated.
Gravity is a god because it's the answer. It's the magic answer to everything. Why? How does the Earth keep us on, but it still spins around, it still orbits, and all gravity? How's the moon? How's the type of gravity? Why doesn't the moon fly off to the sun? Because the sun's got bigger gravity. It's the way gravity works. Don't worry about its gravity. Gravity is the god that explains everything very, very magically. There is no need for gravity whatsoever if we're on a fixed stationary plane and the heavenly bodies are simply going above us. The reason why you don't fall off is because you're denser than the air that underneath you. It's just, again, Occam's razor. It's a straightforward explanation.
Basically, perspective of living on a globe is preposterous, it's ridiculous, it's hilarious. How we are taught to perceive the world we live on, because basically, even when trying to depict it, it's hilarious. They have no way of depicting it without it being comical. You have whales climbing the curve, like, it's absurd. How can we live on a globe?
Core of the Earth, you know, that you've seen the cutaway. This much is crust and mantle and magma and liquid molten stuff at the center. The deepest hole that's ever been drilled in the history of mankind to date, even with today's technology, 8 miles. If you want to say this is what the first 8 miles looks like, I will believe you, because they can show me the hole. This goes 8 miles down, okay? It goes 8 miles down. That's how thick is the plane that we live on? It's at least 8 miles, because they've drilled down that far, but they can't go any farther. It doesn't work. So it's speculation.
With a sphere of 4,000 miles radius being spun round once every 24 hours, a little bit of calculations will show that that person there is being spun round at about 1,000 miles an hour, and it doesn't know it? I mean, this is obvious nonsense.
Although various solutions were advanced, in the end, science was faced with a choice. Either discard the ether, or admit that the Earth wasn't orbiting the Sun. It was Albert Einstein who came up with the solution, which now forms the basis of our physics, and which we call the theory of relativity. Einstein eliminated the ether as the cause, and said that it was simply a principle of nature. That when objects move through empty space, they contract in length, they decrease in the time traveled, and their mass increases, all by the same proportion.
All of physics collapses with that experiment.
Foucault's pendulums do not uniformly swing in any one direction. Sometimes they rotate clockwise, and sometimes counterclockwise. Sometimes they fail to rotate, and sometimes they rotate far too much. Scientists who have repeated variations of the experiment have conceded time and again that, quote, it was difficult to avoid giving the pendulum some slight lateral bias at starting. The behavior of the pendulum actually depends on 1. The initial force beginning its swing, and 2. The ball and socket joint used, which most readily facilitates circular motion over any other. The supposed rotation of the Earth is completely inconsequential and irrelevant to the pendulum's swing. If the alleged constant rotation of the Earth affected pendulums in any way, then there should be no need to manually start pendulums in motion. If Earth's diurnal rotation caused the 360-degree uniform rotation of pendulums, then there should not exist a stationary pendulum anywhere on Earth. It has been said that the pendulum experiment proves the rotation of the Earth. But this is quite impossible, for one pendulum turns one way, and sometimes another pendulum turns in the opposite direction. Now we ask, does the Earth rotate in opposite directions at different places at one and the same time? We should like to know. Perhaps the experimenters will kindly enlighten us on this point.
There's all kinds of evidence for the phenomenon of what's called continental drift. This means that the continents are able to move as if they're floating on a fluid. Now, if the Earth is spherical, if it's spinning, anybody knows that if this is spinning very, very, very fast like that the continents should all be located at the equator, because centrifugal force would move the continents from the poles to the middle.
The Coriolis effect is often said to cause sinks and toilet bowls in the northern hemisphere to drain spinning in one direction, while in the southern hemisphere causing them to spin the opposite way, thus providing proof of the spinning ball Earth. Once again, however, just like Foucault's pendulums spinning either which way, sinks and toilets in the northern and southern hemisphere do not constantly spin in any one direction. Sinks and toilets in the very same household are often found to spin in opposite directions, depending entirely upon the shape of the basin and the angle of the water's entry, not the supposed rotation of the Earth. Jennifer Horton wrote, "While the premise makes sense that the Earth's eastward spin would cause the water in a toilet bowl to spin as well, in reality the force and speed at which the water enters and leaves the receptacle is much too great to be influenced by something as minuscule as a single 360-degree turn over the span of a day. When all is said and done, the Coriolis effect plays no larger a role in toilet flushes than it does in the revolution of CDs in your stereo. The things that really determine the direction in which water leaves your toilet or sink are the shape of the bowl and the angle at which the liquid initially enters the bowl." The Coriolis effect is also said to affect bullet trajectories and weather patterns as well, supposedly causing most storms in the northern hemisphere to rotate counterclockwise and most storms in the southern hemisphere to rotate clockwise, to cause bullets from long-range guns to tend towards the right of the target in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. Again, however, the same problems remain. Not every bullet and not every storm consistently displays the behavior and therefore cannot reasonably be used as proof of anything.
They got us to ridicule it, and that was the genius in their whole plan. If you ridicule something socially, it's ridiculous, so I'm not going to look into it. When if you thinking about it, if you flip it inside out, to assume the Earth is flat makes so much sense. To assume it's a globe is so ridiculous. We should have laughed at that, you know. And it's funny how people who still believe in the sphere always make fun of the flat Earth, because they'll say, "Well, how can I stay on? I'll fall off. I mean, that's ridiculous. I'll fall off." Yet they have total faith in not tumbling down the sphere. For some reason, this appears safe to them. You know, it's like, no, wouldn't a level surface appear more sensible and safe if you really think about it?
People say, well, go look at the planets. The planets are spheres, so that means we're a sphere. No, whip out a telescope. I've got one. Whip out your telescope and look at Mars. It's a dot of light. It's an orange dot. And then when you look at a NASA image, it's this desert world with canyons and ice and craters and shit. But when you look at it through an amateur telescope, like a good amateur telescope, not one from fucking Walmart, like a good one, it's an orange dot. It's not a desert world with canyons and shit that they went to. There's no rover on Mars. They're prepping us with movies like The Martian so they can steal our money on a fake trip to Mars, just like they stole our money on a fake trip to the moon.
Behold, the mysterious floating orb. Ooh! Ah! Ooh! Ah! Soup's on.
You don't need all the complex theories and math. The sun isn't 93 million miles away. It's much closer, and much smaller. Oh, it's 400 times bigger than the moon, but it's also 400 times farther away, so it appears to be the same size. The sun and moon are the same size, and they're not as far as they say they are. They circle above the plane that we live on, the flat plane. They circle. The sun shines down like a spotlight. It's around 24 hours.
The same phenomenon Eratosthenes measured could be explained by a flat Earth if the sun were only a few thousand miles away and 32 miles across. The math would work out the same.
Once you realize what's going on, you're on a flat plane, you can see the sun. It's like it moves towards you, passes overhead, and moves away from you. It's perspective, the distance. It moves that direction until it reaches the vanishing point, the point of convergence on the horizon, where you can no longer see its light.
This is a really, really good video to watch. It's called The Amazing Flight of a Balloon to the Edge of Space. And if you watch it, you will see, because those are clouds there. This isn't the ocean. This is clouds. And what have we got here? That's a hot spot from the sun. Now, if the sun's 93 million miles away, yeah, but massive, how is it causing a heat spot on here? Well, this is a still from it. You can watch the video for yourself, but this is what it does. There's minutes and minutes of this video as it spins around, and you can see it again and again. It will blow your mind because you'll see the sun isn't that far away at all, because it can't be causing a heat spot on the clouds if it's 93 million miles away. If it's massive, it should all be coming in at the same angle. There should be no...
The sun is obviously not 93 million miles away. It looks very close.
Circumnavigation is really just a flat circle path. Gravity as we know it simply doesn't exist.
The sailor thinks that he's traveling around the Earth this way, when in effect he's traveling around the Earth this way. And he's creating a circle. He's moving in a continuous direction around. He goes through the various parts of the circle, and he comes back where he started from. Just went around this way.
One of heliocentrists' favorite supposed proofs of their ball Earth theory is the ability for ships and planes to circumnavigate, to sail or fly at right angles to the North Pole, and eventually return to their original location. Since the North Pole and Antarctica are covered in ice and guarded no-fly zones, however, no ships or planes have ever been known to circumnavigate the Earth in north-south directions, only east-west. And herein lies the rub. East or westbound circumnavigation can just as easily be performed on a flat plane as it can on a globular sphere. Just as a compass can place its center point on a flat piece of paper and trace a circle either way around the pole, so can a ship or plane circumnavigate a flat Earth. The only kind of circumnavigation which could not happen on a flat Earth is north-south bound, which is likely the very reason for the heavily enforced flight restrictions. Flight restrictions originating from none other than the United Nations, the same United Nations which haughtily uses the flat Earth map as its official logo and flag. So the ball earther's logical argument is that only a globe can be circumnavigated, the Earth has been circumnavigated, and therefore the Earth is a globe. This is indeed a logical modus ponens statement, but the conclusion is rendered invalid because the first premise, that only a globe can be circumnavigated, is categorically false.
And I've heard people say that the reason they don't want to publish papers that disagree with special relativity or general relativity is that they built their careers on this. If you were paranoid, you'd say there's a conspiracy. Whatever it is, there is a lot of resistance to getting something published that disagrees with either of Einstein's two theories.
As for all of the photos and video evidence we now have that the Earth is round, well, all of that material is completely fabricated. A hoax perpetrated by space agencies, airlines, globe manufacturers. They are reaping the rewards of our ignorant belief that the Earth is actually round.
tail's turned up. Yes, you run from here to the arms of another. Is it any wonder why you feel the need to rebel, sweetheart? Soul is lost, been lost for years, like a shadow in the dark. The bright lights made her disappear, so go ahead and rebel, sweetheart. You've been without a cause from the start. It don't matter to me, you turn out to be. It's your own fault. One day you'll see. Go ahead and rebel, my dear. Tail's turned up, yes, you run from here to the arms of another. Is it any wonder why you feel the need to rebel, sweetheart? Oh, why you feel the need to rebel, sweetheart?